Scrapwood challenge, scrapwood challenge. It's crap, it's firewood, but some of the wood is good.
I'll start by picking out the pieces I need for today's project, which is a coffee table. And as you can see, there's still enough camphor laurel left for a few scrapwood challenges yet. I'm planing one flat edge on all the pieces and then ripping the opposite edge on the table saw. I'm making a segmented ring for the outside of the table, and that requires 18 pieces, and the waste pieces will come in handy for another project. I'm going through and cutting one end on each piece at 10 degrees. When they're all done, I'll also cut a 10-degree angle on the opposite end. I'm joining the segments with floating tenons, so here I'm marking out the positions of the mortises. Now I'm making a rebate for a piece of plywood to sit in. I make a pass, then lower the bit and go again. I made about 5 passes in total. The bearing on the router bit bottomed out onto the table, so I had to raise the workpiece slightly. This smiley face jig is going to help me cut a bevel on the underside of the ring. It keeps the ring secured against the jig but allows it to be turned into the raised blade. I reclaimed this plywood from some shelving that I recently pulled down. It's excellent quality and very flat. I just need to remove the vinyl and the glue off it first. The centre of the table is going to have Kumiko, and then I'm going to pour epoxy resin into that. If you're not sure what Kumiko is, then stick around and you'll find out. Next I need to fill the centre with Kumiko. It's coming along, but it's not ready just yet to put a cup of coffee on. But as it's a new day, I am ready for a good strong cup of coffee, and while I make that, I'll thank Trade Coffee for sponsoring today's video. If you struggle to find the perfect coffee from the grocery store, Trade solves that by connecting you to new coffees from top roasters to satisfy your taste. Take the quiz to refine your choice and find the perfect coffee that's matched to your style and palate, whether you like light, medium or dark roast, beans or ground, or even the equipment you use to make your coffee helps to find that perfect match. I personally like strong coffee that tastes like coffee, but if you prefer your coffee with a hint of something else, then the quiz has you covered for that too. After you've selected your coffee, you can choose your delivery frequency and it'll appear at your door fresh from the roaster. Then rate and repeat, rate those matches so Trade can continue to delight you with coffees that you'll love. The first 100 viewers that click the link in the description will get 30% off their first bag with free shipping included, and thanks again to Trade for sponsoring today's video. Now I'll start preparing a board to make strips for the Kumiko. The strips come off the saw pretty clean and just need a pass of the plane to clean them up on either side and to get them to the final thickness. I'm coating the Kumiko now with water-based varnish to seal them before they get cut and assembled. I gave them a couple of coats and sanded them between. I was about to make a jig to make the Kumiko, then I found a video by Mike Farrington showing exactly how to do that. I'll put a link to that in the description. It turns out the jig is pretty much the same as my wedgie sled. I just needed to add a groove for a key, Mike's video also explains the whole process of how to make this Kumiko pattern. The grid consists of two different strips. The first one is cut on the nearest vent and is about a third of the way up the strip, and then it's flipped over for a cut on either side. For the other type of strip, the blade needs hiring to 2/3 of the height of the strip. The first cut is made on the nearest vents, and then the same position is cut again but on the furthest vents, and there are twice as many of these second strips as the first. I'm sealing the inner edges of the ring with water-based varnish ready for pouring epoxy later on, but also using that to glue down the Kumiko grid. A few pieces of the grid broke off and need repairing from when I was cutting it to fit the ring. Now I need lots of small pieces of Kumiko to fill the grid, and that'd be around 400 pieces. All the pieces in this pattern are exactly the same. I go through and I cut a 30-degree point on one end of every piece, and then I go through them all again and I put a 60-degree point on the other end. I'm using water-based varnish again to glue the pieces, but also to seal the joints. That should help prevent air bubbles when I pour the epoxy. While the full triangles in the centre took quite a while, all the broken triangles around the edge took much longer. I had to fit each piece individually and glue it in place. I started sanding them to size, but I found it easier to fine tune them by cutting them with a chisel and a Kumiko jig with the nearest matching angle. This is the first time I've poured epoxy in this sort of quantity, but fingers crossed it works out. Even though I sealed the plywood to the edge of the ring, it did seep through in a couple of places, so I just had to put a clamp on and tighten those areas up. It's the next day, the epoxy is still setting, so I'll start on the legs. I decided to have a bit of practice with the skew chisel. I certainly need plenty more, but it's a very enjoyable tool to use. The legs are quite skinny, that's what I'm looking for, as I want them to be quite slender and elegant to match the Kumiko. Anything chunky would spoil the look of the table completely, and it only has to hold a few cups of coffee. The legs are done, now I need to make a couple of rails to hold them. These bevels would have been easier to make on the miter saw before I glued the pieces together. They're not even necessary as they won't be seen, but I couldn't help myself, so I just did it with a block plane. The epoxy is set, so now I can get started on the sanding. I don't want a glossy finish, a satin finish is what I'm after, so I'll go through the grits until I get the finish that I like. I'm pretty happy with the finish just at 400, but I will go one more and try 600 and see how that looks. I'm super happy with how that turned out. I could improve on a couple of things, but I'll know for next time. But overall, I am very, very happy with it. Thanks again to Trade for sponsoring the video, and don't forget to check them out. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.